campaigns had flowed into its principal campaign this month. Now, former U.S. President Donald Trump has said if he's defeated by Kamala Harris this year, he does not plan to run for the White House in 2028. In an interview with Sinclair Media, Trump emphasized he does not intend to pursue another campaign. Trump has been the Republican candidate for 3 national elections in a row. U.S. law bars presidents from serving more than 2 terms. However, questions were raised if Trump would challenge the law. The latest comment is important because Trump rarely admits to the possibility that he could legitimately lose an election. Trump normally insists that could only happen if there was widespread cheating. This is what he said about the 2020 elections and has also preemptively repeated that same claim in this year's election as well. Let's now turn to a special interview lined up today on U.S. Election Watch. Our guest is an Indian-American lawmaker who was elected to Congress in 2016 and is now in his 4th term. Joining us is Democratic Representative Raja Krishnamoorthi. Congressman Krishnamoorthi, thank you very much for joining us here on NDTV. Congressman Krishnamoorthi, Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as you know, is in the US right now. He attended the Quad Summit over the weekend. The Quad Alliance includes, of course, India, Japan, Australia, the United States, which is a counterbalance to China. Now, President Joe Biden hosted his final Quad meeting this weekend, but Biden's not going to be around much longer. He's not going to be president much longer. It's really an uncertain time here in the US. What happens to the Quad after November the 5th?
I think that the Quad is going to last well beyond November. I think it's been embraced by presidents of both parties, whether it was Obama or Trump or Biden. And I think that the relationships between the US and India, as well as Australia and Japan, transcend politics at this point. So I think that this gathering is going to continue for many years to come.
Is there anything that worries you if we have Trump in the mix, worries you with regards to the Quad and India?
No, I think that, Donald Trump will continue to be a friend of India, although I'm very certain that Kamala Harris will be the next president, in which case we'll have our first Indian American president of the United States. And of course, she will continue to maintain and strengthen relations between the world's oldest and the world's largest democracies in the US and in India.
All right, Congressman Krishnamoorthi, let's move to another question that's really important for our Indian audiences. India has a wealth of young talent, many of whom come to the United States to study, as you know. Now, you've recently said that the U.S. really needs a shake-up as far as fixing its legal immigration system goes. You said that it's totally messed up. Firstly, what needs to change? And if Kamala Harris is president, why will she bring about that change given that the Biden administration had nearly 4 years to fix these problems?
Well, unfortunately, she didn't have, and the president did not have, a Congress that was amenable to these changes. Unfortunately, for instance, the U.S. House is governed by Republicans, and they will not allow a single legal immigration bill to come to the floor. And so, we have to make sure that our legal immigration system remains strong. I believe it's our #1 killer competitive advantage relative to other countries. That's what brought my own parents and my own family from India to the United States. And I feel confident that if Kamala Harris becomes president and we have a Democratic Congress, that we will get immigration, a legal immigration fix done. And that will mean more prosperity for the U.S. and the world.
What kind of fixes are you referring to? Can you give us a few examples, some specifics?
Sure. I mean, first of all, you may know this already, but we have numerous people in queue who were H-1B visa holders who have not matriculated into green card status. And so I think there are roughly 1 million people who have an H-1B who are waiting decades to become a green card holder. In fact, if you come from India today as an H-1B visa holder, it will take you more than 100 years to become a green card holder, which is completely unacceptable, as you know. And so one of the fixes is my own bill to abolish the quota, the cap on the number of green cards that can be issued by country to H-1B visa holders. If we were to abolish the cap and award green cards on a first come, first served basis, we could effectively deal with this queue, especially from countries like India, and then grant these people some stability to start businesses, to employ Americans, to invest their capital in America and the American economy.
Okay, got it, and good to know. Now, Congressman Krishnamurthy, you are on a very important committee that has a very long name, so I'm not going to get into it. But suffice to tell our viewers that it's a committee that focuses on some sticky issues dealing with economic and security competition in the US vis-a-vis the Chinese Communist Party. Now, Chinese President Xi Jinping has said that the Chinese military needs to be ready to take Taiwan by 2027. That's 3 years from now. Now, if Kamala Harris is in the White House, what will she need to do to make sure that China does not declare war on Taiwan?
Well, first of all, you're right about the long name of the committee. It matches my own long name. And as a fellow Desi and Indian American, I think a lot of your viewers will understand that. With regard to Kamala Harris, I think what she needs to do is to continue doing what the Biden administration has done, which is continue to equip Taiwan with what it needs to deter conflict, to deter an invasion, to discourage the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party, from initiating a coercive reunification with Taiwan. And so that's what I would strongly suggest and hope will continue to occur during a Kamala Harris administration.
All right, so let's talk about another flashpoint on our planet right now, potential, one that's ongoing. In recent days, the situation in the Middle East has gotten even more alarming. There are renewed worries of a wider regional war. When Kamala Harris privately met Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu during his visit to the US in July, she put pressure on Netanyahu to end the war. Things, though, have gotten worse since then. Pager attacks, massive Israeli airstrikes on Hezbollah, as you know. Should Harris become president, would it be time, really, for her to pull back those billions of dollars in military funding for Israel? Many have been calling for that, and we haven't seen it.
I think our partnership with Israel is rock solid, and it's important that we stand with our democratic allies in the Middle East, including Israel, against any aggression. I think that the most important thing that we need to do right now is come to a ceasefire deal that would involve the release of hostages and massive humanitarian aid into Gaza Strip. I think this is essential, and I think we need to get parties in the region to exert their leverage to make that happen. And I think Kamala Harris will continue to do that. I think President Biden, in his remaining months in office, will also continue to do that. It's my hope that we could come to a ceasefire deal before President Biden leaves office. I think that would be a welcome development and provide some space for the parties to pursue what I believe is the ultimate solution, which is a two-state solution to separate and give the Israeli and Palestinian people a chance at a more durable peace long term.
Congressman Krishnamurthy, personally, how do you feel about how things have unfolded? It's taking so very long. Give us a sense of what's going on behind the scenes. Why are things taking so long, and how do you feel about it? Is it a frustrating, long process?
It is. I think that unfortunately, what we see right now is a situation where the incentives for getting to a quick agreement are not there on both sides. and we need to create the incentives to get to a quicker agreement. And that will require, obviously, friends, partners, and allies of Israel to continue to urge it to get to yes. But the same is true of Hamas. And unfortunately, Hamas has taken a position where, basically they don't want to be accountable for what happened on October 7th, even though we know that their attack on October 7th on Israel was completely barbaric and unacceptable. And I just don't see a situation where their participation could possibly be reasonable or expected in the long term in Gaza in its governance.
We have a few minutes left, so let's go back to China for a bit. Now, the Biden administration has told TikTok's parent company, ByteDance, it needs to find a non-Chinese owner, or TikTok could potentially be banned come January 19th, around the time the next president is sworn in. Now, 170 million Americans use TikTok. I was talking to a few TikTokers just a few days ago. Some say that they don't see why Joe Biden or Kamala Harris needs to be worrying about cat videos on TikTok. What do you have to say to those voters?
Well, I hope TikTok survives as a platform. But what we have said as a Congress is that we don't want TikTok to be controlled by the Chinese Communist Party. That is really the underlying issue. And I think that if the CCP were to get ByteDance, TikTok's owner, to divest TikTok, I think that there'd be many willing buyers, and TikTok could continue to survive as a platform and thrive in the United States. That is hopefully what's going to happen.
All right, in 2020, TikTok users in India really bid goodbye to the app following a military clash along the India and the China border. The Indian government said that the Chinese apps, they posed a threat to India's sovereignty and security. India was very swift in making its decision. If this is such a huge problem here in the United States, why doesn't the US just take a leaf out of India's playbook?
Well, I think that there would be challenges, and rightfully so, under the First Amendment for a complete ban of the app. And indeed, those challenges have been made in certain states that engage in such a ban. Instead, what we have proposed and what we got signed into law was a divestment of TikTok by ByteDance, which makes a lot of sense. It's a reasonable step forward, and I hope it's what's going to happen as well.
Thanks very much indeed. That's Congressman Raja Krishnamoorthi joining us here this morning on NDTV. Moving on to other news now, foreign dignitaries at this week's United Nations General Assembly are eager to meet with the next president of the United States. From Europe to the Middle East, several leaders are keen to get an audience with both Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. NDTV's Vishal Vivek has more.
New York is playing host to hundreds of foreign dignitaries this week for the United Nations General Assembly. Keeping in mind the presidential candidates' contrasting foreign policy views, the leaders are looking to take advantage of their US trip and meet both Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, according to reports. Ukrainian President Zelensky is set to meet both the leaders. Reports suggest that other than US President Joe Biden, Zelensky will also be presenting his victory plan to the candidates. Zelensky has repeatedly been asking for the US's help in combating Russia's invasion. While Harris is set to hold talks with UAE's President Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, Trump has already met the Qatari Prime Minister Mohammed bin Abdulrahman Al Thani over the weekend in Florida. Some of these meetings highlight the importance given by presidential candidates to the regions affected by military conflict. Trump said a few days ago that he was looking forward to meeting Prime Minister Narendra Modi during his US trip. However, the meet is yet to be confirmed by the Indian government. According to reports, both the Harris and Trump campaigns have received requests from dozens of countries for meetings. However, the excitement shown by world leaders to meet the candidates is not getting reciprocated by respective campaigns, as international affairs are secondary to key domestic concerns such as the economy, immigration, and abortion. With just about 40 days remaining for the presidential election, both the Harris and Trump campaigns intend to focus more on domestic issues. With Vishal Vivek, Bureau Report for NDTV World.
The 2024 presidential election is shaping up to be the closest in decades. It's the tightest race for the White House in the past 60 years. Recent polls show Harris leading nationally with 52% compared to Trump's 48%. The contest remains well within the margin of error and is still too close to call. However, Trump has an advantage in battleground Arizona and leading in tight races in Georgia and North Carolina, all swing states. That's according to the latest New York Times and Siena College survey. We're joined by Associate Professor Hans Noel. He is with the Department of Government at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C. Hans, we do have to take all these polls with a pinch of salt. That's a given. But the latest New York Times poll is particularly interesting. Overall, we've seen Harris mostly leading slightly in previous polls, but the latest one that zooms in on Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina shows Trump has an edge. Why did that happen?
Well, it's hard to know exactly why it happened. As you say, we want to always be cautious looking at any one individual poll. So polls bounce around, and it's could just be noise. It could also be something real, but that won't last. But there is a little slight move in this direction. These are three states that are swing states, but they're swing states that probably were leaning a little bit towards Trump in the first place, as opposed to some of the other swing states that might be leaning a little bit towards Harris. So this isn't a huge amount of news, but it is a change, it's a move in a little bit more of a lead, especially in Arizona. And so that probably is driven a little bit by recent events bouncing around, the assassination attempt perhaps. But I think really we'll not know what's going on with these polls or anything else until we go another week or two and see whether or not that bounce is permanent or is just noise.
Now, in the US, it's possible for a presidential candidate to lose the popular vote but still win the elections. Example, 2016, Trump did not win the popular vote, but he won the White House. That's because he bagged the most Electoral College votes. Given the Electoral College system, how crucial is it winning states like Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina?
Yeah, so there's probably about 7 states, we think, in this particular election that are, close enough that they're going to matter. There are 3 states across the north, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. Those maybe lean a little bit towards Harris, but they're really close, and we would say that they're, up for grabs. Nevada is very, very close. And then these 3 states, as I say, have been sort of leaning a little bit towards Trump, and then, this latest poll suggests that that's real. So you need to win enough of those votes. It's possible for Harris to win without any of the 3 that we've just been talking about. If she wins those 3 across the north, then it'll be very, very, very close. But of course, you don't want that. You want to be winning, clearly, and those states are also not guaranteed. So these are the places where the battle is happening, and not surprisingly, it's places where things are really close. It's also where the campaigns are paying a lot of attention. So you might expect then that, both sides are making their cases and things are bouncing back and forth in exactly those places. And we won't know until, closer to the election what the outcome's likely to be.
Hans, one of the things that stood out to me about the NY poll, while Trump had that edge in those states, it's mainly him. Down ballot Republican candidates, those running for the Congress or the House of Representatives, are not seeing that bounce. How do we interpret that?
Well, Trump has sort of broken with a lot of the, sort of traditional attachment with the Republican Party. And so, he has his own brand. His own brand should extend to some of those candidates in those states. He's, attached to them. He's, identifying with them and, in some cases, encouraged and endorsed them and so on. But he still has, his own unique appeal that is very personal. And so when it comes to the margin of support and about the presidential election, he could break away from the standard. The fact that he's leading ahead of other Republicans is a good sign for Trump, because it suggests that, whatever difficulties and whatever swing you might have one way or another between the parties, he's doing a little bit better and may break through on that end. Since we're expecting to be a very, very close race, that kind of difference could very well be the difference that makes gives us the result.
Let's talk about another hot button issue here for voters in the United States, the economy. Last week, we saw the U.S. Central Bank, or the Fed, lower interest rates after keeping them at 23-year highs as it tries to control inflation. How much of this rate cut will likely translate into voter sentiment, do you think, Hans, as borrowing becomes cheaper? For example, it will bring some relief to home owners, people looking to buy a home with mortgage rates potentially coming down.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the rate cut itself probably isn't going to have much of an effect. Most voters aren't paying that close of attention, and the ones who are paying attention probably are also paying a lot of attention to the election, and they already have made up their minds. But the swing voters, the voters whose positions are sort of yet to gel, a lot of them are going to be reacting to the state of the economy, how well things are going. There's a lot that goes into the state of the economy, not just inflation and not just interest rates, but as if interest rates cut a little bit, that tends to, make it easier to borrow. It makes it a little bit, prices feel less expensive because it's easier to get money. It also tends to juice demand a little bit, which could then, of course, have other consequences on inflation, which is why the Fed is trying to carefully, calibrate where this is. But assuming that the Fed has done its job correctly, which we will see, then that should, have positive effects on the economy, which means it should have positive effects for the incumbent party, in this case, Harris.
Well, just last question here for you, Hans. I would think that claiming a win over interest rates is kind of tricky for Kamala Harris, yeah, because on the one hand, it shows inflation is within control, but then the Fed is independent of government. But Trump, of course, alleging that the Fed is playing politics. So how does Kamala Harris weigh into this without kind of sounding like she's encroaching on the independence of the Fed?
Yeah, I think that mostly the politics of this is going to be inside baseball stuff. It's going to matter a lot to, us here in Washington, but it's not going to matter very much to ordinary voters. And so, the campaigns will say what they say, and they'll try to spin things in the direction that they want to go. But really, what's going to matter is what are the actual consequences of the rate cut and any other economic policies on pocketbooks, the experience both individually as a voter, and then also as people look around and what they sense the economy is doing. If they feel like the economy is improving, that inflation is not, is sort of, cooling down and so on, then that's usually means that they'll be sort of happier with the incumbent. If they start to feel like, well, no, things are worse and I'm worse off than I was 4 years ago, then they're going to be looking for a change. And how the campaigns sort of spin the specific policies about the Fed rate cuts and so forth isn't going to matter as much as how they spin the state of the economy itself, and if the message that they send about how well the economy is doing. And that's the kind of message that I expect to hear from both candidates in the next weeks and months.
Hans Noel at Georgetown University, thank you very much for joining us here on NDTV this morning. Foreign dignitaries at this week's United Nations General Assembly are eager to meet with the next president of the United States. From Europe to the Middle East, several leaders are keen to meet those leaders, both Kamala Harris and, of course, also Donald Trump. As we told you now, several top operatives on Republican Mark Robinson's campaign for North Carolina governor have resigned following a CNN report that revealed inflammatory comments the candidate made on a porn website. Among those stepping down, Robinson's campaign manager, his finance director, and his deputy campaign manager. The resignations come after CNN reported on lewd comments made by the Republican nominee, including his description of himself as a black Nazi and recounting instances of peeping on women at a public gym when he was 14 years old. And that's all we have time for here on US Election Watch. Thanks for your company.
If you're over 50, enjoy peace of mind knowing your family will receive a guaranteed payout when you're gone. Post Office Over 50s life cover is simple and affordable. You're guaranteed acceptance if you're a UK resident aged 50 to 80. There are no health checks. And it starts from just £1.15 a week. Plus, you can get free 24/7 GP access with the health and wellbeing benefit. Come on, enjoy yourself. Safe in the knowledge, Over 50s life cover will pay out money when you die, as a gift. Call our UK call centre now on 0800 169 1100 and choose your £125 gift card for amazon.co.uk, Tesco or M&S.
This is an important message for people living with diabetes from people living with diabetes.
When I was experiencing the symptoms of diabetes, I didn't know what was going on.
You go on the internet and it's full of horror stories.
I didn't understand about carbs, I didn't understand about blood glucose levels.
That's why the support I get as a Diabetes UK member is so important.
You can become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. When you do, you'll receive a practical guide specific to your type of diabetes and a copy of Balance magazine 4 times a year. Plus, you'll help support research that could lead to better treatments for all types of diabetes.
As members, we're all working it out together.
Call 0800 144 5410 or go online to become a Diabetes UK member for just £3 a month. Join us now because membership can help you learn to live better with diabetes.
Whoever you are and whatever might happen, Remitly money transfers keep life moving. Because it's more than a transaction. It's a connection, a hug, or a hello, what's happening here? Send money to South Asia with Remitly. Send money that moves them. Download the Remitly app.
Mindful Chef. Food to help you feel great. Be ready for whatever life brings. With recipes so easy, you'll love making them. Choose meals you can make in 10 minutes. At Mindful Chef, you won't find any refined carbs. We always use 100% British meat. All of our chicken is free range and lots of vegan options too. Try Mindful Chef now with 25% off your first 4 boxes. Healthy eating made easy at mindfulchef.com.
The $3.95 trial set with our sharpest ever Truman razor. Get started now at harrys.com. Harry's. Feel good, fellas.
Do you need to borrow money for home improvements, a car, or paying off debts? Then you've come to the right place. Everyday Loans. Just tell us how much you want to borrow, up to £15,000. At Everyday Loans, we offer a service that's friendly and reliable. Apply online or on your phone. So whatever your credit record, apply now at everydayloans.co.uk. We recommend seeking free debt advice if you are taking out a debt consolidation loan. Representative APR 99.9%.
What does a robot know about love? It takes a human to translate that leap in our hearts into something we can see and hold. Essie.
One-sixth of humanity की आवाज आप तक पहुंचाने यहां आया हूं। फ्रेंड्स, जब हम ग्लोबल फ्यूचर की बात कर रहे हैं तो ह्यूमन सेंट्रिक अप्रोच सर्वप्रथम होनी चाहिए। सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट को प्राथमिकता देते हुए हमें मानव कल्याण, फूड, हेल्थ सिक्योरिटी यह भी सुनिश्चित करनी होगी। भारत में 250 मिलियन लोगों को गरीबी से बाहर निकालकर हमने यह दिखाया है कि सस्टेनेबल डेवलपमेंट can be successful. सक्सेस का हमारा यह अनुभव हम ग्लोबल साउथ के साथ साझा करने के लिए तैयार है. फ्रेंड्स, सक्सेस ऑफ ह्यूमैनिटी lies in our collective strength, not in the battlefield. और वैश्विक शांति एवं विकास के लिए ग्लोबल संस्थाओं में रिफॉर्म्स आवश्यक है. रिफॉर्म इज द की टू रिलेवेंस. अफ्रीकन यूनियन को नई दिल्ली समिट में G20 की स्थायी सदस्यता इसी दिशा में एक महत्वपूर्ण कदम था. वैश्विक शांति और सुरक्षा के लिए एक तरफ आतंकवाद जैसा बड़ा खतरा है, तो दूसरी तरफ साइबर, मैरीटाइम, स्पेस जैसे अनेक संघर्ष के नए नए मैदान भी बन रहे हैं. इन सभी विषयों पर मैं जोर देकर कहूंगा कि ग्लोबल एक्शन मस्ट मैच ग्लोबल एम्बिशन. फ्रेंड्स, टेक्नोलॉजी के सेफ और रिस्पॉन्सिबल यूज के लिए बैलेंस रेगुलेशन की आवश्यकता है. हमें ऐसी ग्लोबल डिजिटल गवर्नेंस चाहिए जिसमें राष्ट्रीय संप्रभुता और अखंडता अक्षुण्ण रहे. डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर शुड बी ए ब्रिज, नॉट अ बैरियर. ग्लोबल गुड के लिए भारत अपना डिजिटल पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर पूरे विश्व से साझा करने के लिए तैयार है. फ्रेंड्स, भारत के लिए वन अर्थ, वन फैमिली, वन फ्यूचर एक कमिटमेंट है. यही कमिटमेंट हमारे वन अर्थ, वन हेल्थ और वन सन, वन वर्ल्ड, वन ग्रिड जैसे इनिशिएटिव्स में भी दिखाई देता है. पूरी मानवता के हितों की रक्षा और वैश्विक समृद्धि के लिए भारत मनसा वाचा कर्मणा से काम करता रहेगा. बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
All right, so the Prime Minister's much anticipated address at the Summit of the Future is over. It was 5 minutes long, and the Prime Minister's big message has been that collective strength doesn't lie on battlefield. That's a message to the warring nations. He also said that reform is key to relevance. Prime Minister Modi talking about global action must match global ambition. He also said that digital public infrastructure should be a bridge, not a barrier. Went on to say that our collective strength doesn't lie on battlefield. So Vishnu Shom, your big takeaway, of course, it's a very, very brief speech, but something that certainly gives clear picture of how India sees future.
And not just India, I think this has been the Prime Minister's personal vision when he talks about one earth, one world, one people. He talks about how the planet has to work together when it comes to issues such as climate. You cannot be operating as a result of silos. I think I heard him use the words one grid, and I don't know what grid he was referring to, but if it is the sharing of power, resources, and that's certainly something that is very, very important. Let's bring in Ambassador Manjeev Puri, who joins us at this stage. Ambassador, the context of the Prime Minister's short address at the United Nations was linked to the relevance of the United Nations in its present form. That's the basic focus. Is it relevant in its present form, or do you need to have this conference to perhaps have an idea of what the UN can do in the future?
Vishnu, thank you very much, and I'm delighted to see you standing in Manhattan. To you and Maria, let me say the point.